Good morning and welcome to another episode of Shapes of Resilience. Today I am joined by Mr. Dr. Robert Stevens. Robert is someone that I have connected with on Instagram. Like many of my guests, I like to interact with people and have these organic connections where both parties can see what the other person's about. And then at the right moment, I send the invitation out to join me on the podcast because I feel there's some benefit there for myself and also the listeners to be able to learn something from people that are clearly doing amazing things. And I've followed a lot of your work, and clearly you're on the same mission of trying to spread awareness and help people to get to the root cause of areas of their lives that might be going wrong. And your practices help those people to identify and come up with solutions for the individual, which I love. There's no one solution fixes all problems. And yeah, Robert specializes in testosterone and hormones and life coaching, bringing people together, connections, all that good stuff. I might have butchered that, but that's kind of the feeling I get from a lot of your work. But what I would like to do is to just ask you to introduce yourself and a bit about the work you do.
Do you know what? I'd never think in a million years I'd be described as a life coach, but I am in one respect. So fundamentally, I'm a medical doctor, co-founder, medical director of the Men's Health Clinic. We specialize in diagnosing testosterone deficiency and treating people with testosterone replacement therapy if indicated. We've been practicing now for 10 years. We've got patients from all over the world, 50 different countries, including the USA, where TRT is everywhere. And that fundamentally breaks down into what we do. Now, obviously, testosterone replacement therapy, but we offer microdosing testosterone replacement therapy. And if you think about any sort of drug therapy, it should be either to correct a pathology or to mimic physiology. And microdosing TRT does that. Again, it's in the best interest of the patient. So, number one part of my job is to dial patients in on testosterone replacement therapy. But number two is to give them the tools to be an effective human being. And this is because testosterone doesn't do anything. It's the foundation hormone to allow you to put work in to earn your reward, which is sort of our motto, because it's a fundamental hormone necessary for growth and repair. Everybody knows it's about muscles and sex. No, it's necessary for just normal physiology, and that's how your body functions. So when we first started the clinic, we had this association with obviously, the physical side, but it evolved very quickly into the psychological side and the appreciation that testosterone is necessary for mental health. And that's not excluded to just men, it's females as well, because testosterone has this wonderful relationship with dopamine, that reward chemical that we're all seeking constantly. So that's necessary for both males and females. So it's providing people with the necessary tools, realistic expectations for them to go out and kind of, I hate to say this word, be the best version of themselves, but that's really what this is all about.
I like that. So tying that into the theme of the podcast being resilience, if you've got two camps and one camp try and build their resilience without looking at their hormone balance, and they do all these good things and look at their lifestyle and look at habits, behaviors, mindset, but they neglect anything around what's going on inside. And then you've got the other camp that do the same thing, but they're also aware of their hormones and the importance of looking at the hormones and their individual physiology. How do this camp potentially have a better chance at becoming more resilient human beings compared to this camp?
You cannot outthink your physiology. So fundamentally, there's a link between how your body functions and how your mind functions. It's a bi-directional relationship. So again, think of the foundation being how your body functions. Now you can positively impact both. It's bi-directional, but you cannot outthink your physiology. So you've obviously had on the podcast before some special forces guys who have got that elite mindset. They can push through, they can push through. But what they don't have is that understanding of the necessity for balance, and that appreciation of yin yang. So in order to establish that equilibrium, there must be contrast. And they push, and it allows them to do what they need to do for the task, but ultimately it doesn't look after their body. It can all be explained by yin yang. And I think that understanding will serve you well in life, because hormones are the base. They allow you to function effectively. Without healthy hormones, you cannot be the person that you're meant to be. And I think men, they don't achieve their potential, their true potential, because they don't understand what they're truly capable of, because they don't understand how their body functions. And we're limited by so many things. And number one, it's body.
Yeah, and I've been very guilty of that push, push, push mentality previously. And I now, without having a complete understanding of what's going on inside, I did a fair amount of self-study, podcasts, books, but also just listening to my body and looking at what's going on inside, and trial and error with habits, diet, lifestyle, sleep. And I feel like I'm so much better. I don't feel like I'm anywhere near as good as I could be potential wise with managing my hormones, but I feel like I do enough to recognize some of the deficiencies that I feel are there that I was able to just feel.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because when we're young, we're absolutely invincible. And we battle through, we battle through, battle through. And your body gives you thousands and thousands of chances, and you recover and you do it again. You feel crap, you do it again, recover. But eventually your body gives up because, again, you can't outthink your physiology.
That's going to be the title for this podcast. I always choose them mid conversation, and it's the phrase that is maybe said twice or just makes sense. You can't outthink your physiology. It's perfect because it makes perfect sense to me. And I feel like so many people, myself included, at certain points, we try and outthink our way out of everything, thinking that the thing we're thinking about is the problem.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because, I mean, we're all walking wounded, because you get to that place and you go, shit, I need to readdress X, Y, Z. And then that fundamentally comes about understanding. And it's not just physiology, it's just psychology as well. And then even deep into spirituality or whatever. But it all starts from a base, and looking after the principles and understanding that rules, they're not overly useful. Principles are more useful because they're adaptable.
Absolutely. So I think it'd be good for the listeners that have never really even thought about what hormones are to give a very brief summary of your key hormones, what they do, and how people could potentially understand a bit more about what their hormones are doing. Just so we've got that at the start, so then people were like, oh, actually, that thing that happens to me could mean that I'm potentially dependent on this or deficient in that.
Yeah, listen, I've been a doctor now for 30 years, and medical school, my informative years as a junior doctor to be where I am right now. You don't understand hormones in the depth or necessity that you should understand them, even as a doctor. So the definition is they're a chemical messenger that helps facilitate the function of their target organs. But it's way more complicated than that. So essentially, they're the base of a pyramid. And that pyramid, the strongest part of the pyramid is obviously the foundation. And it provides a level of chronicity. Above the hormones, you've got your acute nervous system. And that's obviously reacting to acute situations. And above that, you've got at the top of the pyramid, you've got your reactive brain. So without that chronicity, you've got an acute nervous system and a reactive brain going, what the hell? Now, again, going back to that concept of yin yang and the fact that you need to have contrast to establish balance, we're here for one reason from an animal perspective, and that's to survive, to pass on our DNA. So in order for you to survive, you need to be able to react to a stress. Okay, so that's a fight flight response. That's the autonomic nervous system, that second part of the pyramid. The base of that, the hormone part of the acute sympathetic nervous system, is cortisol, so your stress hormone. So that's going to allow you to react to a stressor. Now, in order for you to react appropriately to a stressor, it's not those neurotransmitters and hormones, it's the opposite. So it's the testosterone and the parasympathetic nervous system sits above that. So the calming part of the autonomic nervous system. So again, it's yin yang, and it's an appropriate amount of stress and an appropriate amount of calm. And that's really what it's all about, that appropriate use of your mind to impact your body and vice versa.
I like the word balance, and I like the thought that not all stress is bad, and that we actually need a certain level of stress to use our body in the right way, and that a life with no stress would actually mean your nervous system is more likely to just want to shut down and like, well, what am I here for? I've got no stress at all. Everything's just laid out for me. I'm not problem solving. So what would be like a definition or an example of good stress, good levels of stress?
Listen, we live in a world of psychological stress, and that psychological stress is normally counterproductive and counterintuitive to survival. Now we can't escape that. So obviously, as a base animal, physical stress is far more beneficial than psychological stress. Again, that's a bold statement, but the reality is fundamentally that's true. So when you encounter lots of psychological stress, you release the same neurotransmitters and hormones as you do with physical stress, but you're not physical. So you're not moving to sort of essentially burn up all of those neurotransmitters and hormones. So rather than transitioning from a stress state to a resting state, you can't. You're constantly in a stress state. And men, we're very simple creatures: day, night, day, night, day, night. And so you don't get a good night's sleep. So what happens? We wake up in a more stressed state to then encounter more psychological stress, and then you get worse and worse and worse and worse. And then you reach to the path of least resistance, maximum reward. And again, I'm sure with your podcast, you've heard the phrase comfort in discomfort a million times, and
Yeah,
hardship will see you through. And that's absolutely true, with the understanding of balance, with the understanding of day, night, day, night, day,
yeah,
night, and the cyclical nature of hormones, nerves, and everything.
yeah. I agree with that wholeheartedly, and it depends on the person I'm speaking to when we engage in these conversations around being comfortable in discomfort, because it's almost become cliche, and it's not cliche. It's very, very true. But I feel like there's so much on the internet and so many people, coaches especially, that like to portray a certain image and push a certain narrative without really having lived their lives in line with the way that they're portraying. And this is why, speaking to guys like you've referenced within the special forces and military and emergency services, that day in day out have been faced with very uncomfortable scenarios, and these aren't the only people, but it does develop that part of your physiology and psychology where you're able to become quite comfortable, and you almost become so resilient to those scenarios that to me is that's being comfortable in discomfort. And there's others that maybe aren't quite in line with that, so it's an interesting topic. But yeah, what do you see it actually being?
Well, it goes back to that fact that true strength comes from an awareness of vulnerability. And if you're all go, 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 essentially, again, your body will eventually give up. So we talked earlier about PTSD and the complexities of that. But again, it goes back to physiology. It goes back to an understanding of your autonomic nervous system. And not to bore everybody with the science, but if you're stress, sympathetic, 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 you transition into something called the dorsal vagal part of your nervous system, and you turn into you have this dissociative state where you're not reacting appropriately to situations, and then you can't be a normal member of society because your brain's essentially switched off. And an animal would either fight or flight. Now, people that, in the special forces and police and prison officers, you're constantly fighting and not flighting. So it goes against survival. And again, firefighters running into danger constantly, you know, eventually your brain just goes, I've had enough. As a base animal, you just shut down. But consciousness adds an unnecessary layer of complexity to your experience. So, lots of murderers are actually in a dissociative state rather than just being horrible people. They've been traumatized so long, and it's got to their nervous system, and their consciousness is affected, and they do horrible things. It's
That makes
it's
sense.
it's horrific, really.
Yeah, it makes sense. Those that hurt the most are the people that are hurting the most themselves, aren't they? It's like a cycle.
It's interested. It's the polyvagal theory by Stephen Porges. It makes sense that, again, much like a gazelle that's caught by a lion, it's not necessarily dead, but it's in the grips of certain death. So it shuts down to protect itself because there is always the potential for survival. If the lion lets the gazelle go because it's disturbed by something else, or it leaves them to play with the cubs, and the cubs let the gazelle run away. There's why plays have that shake off. When you see animals stand up, sometimes
Yeah.
it's shaking off that sympathetic overstimulation to then hopefully escape and get on with things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel, going back to the PTSD conversation, it's by having that label on yourself and the self-talk that goes with that, it almost creates this encouragement to yourself to say, I can't do that because I've got PTSD. Whereas really, when push comes to shove, if a herd of lions were chasing towards you, you wouldn't say, I'm not going to run, I'm not in this.
Yeah, I think it's quite sad that we hold on to these labels, because they also allow you to not take personal responsibility for your actions and say, well, I'm depressed. I think it's important, that we take personal responsibility and accountability, and applying too many labels just takes that away, and it encourages more of a victim mentality. But it's a wonderful exploration of consciousness, isn't it? And understanding why, in order for you to work out what you need to be doing to become a better version of yourself, and get out of these horrible situations that you're faced with. Because ultimately, there are people there to support you and hopefully guide you, but it is really down to you.
Down to you. I like the word accountability as well. And I was thinking about this earlier before we came on. And it's every decision we've ever made as human beings, every choice we've made, everything we've ever done has led us both to being sat here staring at each other on a camera talking. There's no ever, like, every choice we've made has led us to here.
Yeah.
I'm not saying this is the pinnacle of our lives, but it's where we are now. This is the present moment that we talk about so much. So we're both engaged in this conversation. We've both got the same intention, where we want to share a conversation that might help others. And that's our choice.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think we are exactly where we need to be.
Yeah.
And what you do next is ultimately down to you. It's all perception. I love the poem If by Roger Kipling, and if you can meet triumph and disaster and treat those two impulses just the same. We are faced with challenges every day, and how you perceive them. If you perceive them as opportunities, great. If you perceive them as threats, not so great. And again, we're talking about, as we spoke earlier, about vibration. If you build on those little wins, you will raise your vibration, so that when something bad happens, you will be, by the very nature of having a higher vibration, more resilient to the negative potential negatives, because you're going to see an opportunity, not a threat.
See, I see my approach, my biggest change in the way I approach life is that when life happens and bad things happen and I feel down, when I'm in that vibration, I learn. And then when I've bounced back, I apply what I've learned, because I know that my energy's then back to where it needs to be to engage in a conversation on a podcast. But maybe if my vibration was lower, I would be mindful that the way I portray and the energy that I give off wouldn't be what I would like it to be. So in those moments, I learn, I reflect, I do the habits and behaviors, I stay disciplined, I don't touch the alcohol and see swimming saunas. And then when I've bounced back, I'm good to go again. That's the two, so that you haven't got to have this consistent push, or always trying to do certain things when your energy might not be in line with that, because life's happening. That's just my approach.
There's also that awareness and acceptance that we are human beings.
Exactly.
And we're fallible. And I think, we're all guilty of going to the negative, going to the victim mentality. But if you can just be considered and aware of where you're going, hopefully you're going to stop yourself from actually causing harm and go, right, okay, this is not where I want to be. But again, we're inherently self-destructive, which is a peculiar human characteristic and trait. But again, it's battling good with bad and light with dark always.
Yeah. So let's talk about the work you do then as part of the Men's Health Clinic. So what was the biggest motivation and driving force of you creating that, first and foremost?
Being very unhappy with what I was doing, being essentially a cog in a broken machine, believing that there was something more that I could do. Very cliche. I wanted to make a difference. And we discovered hormones and testosterone's importance in physical and psychological health, and the shortcomings in the current service and awareness and understanding of the condition. it was an absolute no-brainer just to go head first into it, and own it, because you are your hormones. And I did not understand the importance of hormones as a doctor of 20 years, and this exploration in the last 10 years has been absolutely fascinating to again understand that you hormones are your base for you then to allow you to go on and do what you want to be doing.
And how many people that you've worked with genuinely before you work with them had lost hope?
An alarming number. Fundamentally, the presenting symptoms of low testosterone are low mood, brain fog, low libido. Too many of my patients have admitted to suicidal ideation prior to TRT. We've had countless patients come off of antidepressants now that they've got their hormones optimized. Of the 5,000 plus patients, I would say everybody's mental health has improved because of that testosterone's relationship with dopamine, estradiol's relationship with serotonin, and DHT's relationship with GABA. So again, if we build up the hormones, then it allows the nervous system to work effectively, and then ultimately you do what you want to do.
I've got so much respect for that. I feel like I could really benefit from this because I go through these loops of having good spells, bad spells, but ultimately it's whether I'm putting 100% effort into like becoming the best version of myself, and probably so many others do. But you've got a ceiling on, you're only ever able to get to a 5 out of 10 because that other work to do with the hormones and physiology hasn't been addressed. I've never had a proper blood test or hormone balance test, and it's something I would love to do, but we make excuses.
Yeah, even if it's just as a benchmark,
Yeah,
because then it allows you to then put the effort in and reap the rewards that you should be reaping. Hormones don't cure life. Hormones just level the playing field, give you that foundation. There's a complexity to hormones, but ultimately it's actually pretty damn simple. With hormones, you can achieve your potential, but it's all down to you with that understanding of balance.
yeah. So what are the secondary impacts that you've seen from the clients you've worked with what they're then able to achieve in life?
Yeah, I mean, with regards life goals, I mean, Stas has climbed Everest.
Fair play.
That's quite an achievement, I
I
suppose.
think Stas is a pretty good case study.
He's a golden patient. But then there's people have said I'm gonna just flip this aside a little bit and say it's brought back joy to their lives, because I was going to go around the new jobs and blah, 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 but actually people say like I'm appreciating music again.
I like that.
And again, if we appreciate the fact that life is all about the appreciation of this moment, TRT or healthy hormone levels has allowed them to appreciate the moment, not be worried about the future or worried about the past. It's just again living in the moment and appreciating the little things in life.
I actually got goosebumps because it's something that I'm finding again at the moment through the plans, and we discussed this earlier, and the big changes that I'm approaching in my life has meant that even though I'm not quite there, I know that I will be. And that has given me back a sense of joy to the point where over the last week, I can recall certain moments where music's been playing, whether it's in the car or whether when I'm doing my breathwork sessions, and I'm dancing and I'm singing, and I thought I haven't been able to do this for a while.
Yeah,
And whether that's sad or not, you can't hold on to that because that's in the past. It's the pleasure I'm now getting from those moments shows me two things: one, that I'm on the right path, and two, that we are in control of bringing back that joy to yourself.
Yeah, listen, life is challenging, and life will seem very unfair at times. But again, if you're fully engaged in the moment, then you'd be considered about what your actions are going to be. And I think, too many of us focus on our feelings and our emotions. It's all about actually let my positive behaviors impact my emotions, because the emotions, they fly around. But again, it's building on little wins and building on these positive behaviors that allow you to achieve your true potential, because your nature is to keep yourself safe. And it's like, no, but I want to go and explore, I want to go and achieve. But your survival instincts are say don't take that risk, whereas take the risk but make sure it's calculated. And then you're building and building and building to become a better version of yourself.
which also ties in very nicely to the dopamine reward, because I love like the medium term stuff where it's not so far in the future that by the time you get there, you might have actually changed your intentions and you might not even want that anymore. So I'm going to set myself this target for the week or the month. I'm going to do everything I can to get there. I really want it. Oh, I'm there now. Like, that's a really nice level of reward. And you've rewarded that dopamine because it still exists. It's still like what you want at the time. Whereas that quick, I want to check Instagram now, all dopamine, but there's no long-term or medium-term reward involved in that.
Well, I think one of the problems with big goals is once you've achieved them, what's next?
Yeah.
So, the daily practices of an ice bath, a sauna, breath work, these are all things that you can rely on because, again, the moment is now. When you completed that marathon, it's over. So what's next? So lots of people who have these massive achievements, they feel dead dull afterwards
Yeah,
because it's over. So you need to have those daily practices in place because it is all about now.
I like that, which is why I like to try and do like one big-ish task a year. It kind of works for me that I've done that the last 2 years, where I've done a sea swim at the end of 2024 and then a marathon at the end of last year. And it's quite cool because then I've got a little challenge to do towards the end of the year, which again, I don't take these things massively seriously. A month or two's training and then just give it my best shot. And for me, that was a really nice way of doing it. And it means that you're not constantly what's next, because what other people do is they see that you're someone that might like to get involved in a fundraiser or a challenge, and they'll message, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to go and climb this mountain, we're going to go and I'm getting quite good now at knowing myself whether do I want and need to do that now. No. So I'll just be honest with that. And it's easy to get sucked into saying yes to challenges when it might be a great cause and other people might really want you to become part of it. But how important do you think it is to listen to that internal radar when it's telling you whether something's right or wrong?
It goes to the idea that, you obviously need to lead by example, and you can't set an example if you're not leading by example. So people observe more than they listen. So, it's all about being considered, isn't it? Again, we're doing 100 kilometers in May, and then we're doing 3 marathons back to back in October. But it's just for the crack.
Yeah.
But we're doing it because we want to do it.
You can't beat that. That's fair play.
I'm going to be destroyed. I'm going to be destroyed afterwards. I know that.
You kind of accept it, I think. You
Why
accept
not?
that. Yeah, I accepted, and it was true to my expectations that my body didn't work for a full month after that marathon, because it got pushed so far beyond what it had ever experienced, and I couldn't run for 6 weeks because every time I tried, the shins just weren't working, and there was little clicks and stuff, and I thought, just rest it, and now I'm running again fine. So to me, it's completely worth it because I knew my body would heal. I'll give it time and the space it needs to heal, but you can't take away that memory and achievement of what you've done, can you? So it's that balance. So a topic I think would be good to talk about is something that we shared some back and forth with, because I shared a video on my story of a message from Jordan B. Peterson, and it was the only way out is through, which at the time I'm probably guilty of believing that as a message. And at the time as well, navigating some adversity, my intention was I'm going through that door because that's my way out. I'll be happy once I get there. Once I've fought my way through, even though it hurts and it's stressing me, it's having an impact on me. I'm losing weight. I'm anxious. My sleep's off. I'm still pushing. I'm going through that door because that's the message that I like, because it probably feeds that negative emotion that's inside me because I'm hurting.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go for that because it's the closer I get to the door, the more pain I'm feeling, which is feeding what I want it to feed. So I'm very, very grateful to you actually for sharing your thoughts with me in a very open way and respectful way. And it opened my eyes a little bit. And then I looked at it again. I thought, you're so right in what you said. And it's not to say that through isn't an option. Sometimes through is the right option, but you've got to listen to your body. And I've listened to my body, and now I've treated it as I'm dissolving the door. The door is nothing to me. I've got these other options over here which make me feel a different way. And now that I'm choosing that path, it's like magic. It is literally like magic. So I therefore wholeheartedly agree that through isn't the only way out. But I wanted to ask you what your thoughts on that are.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to what we spoke about earlier about the concept of yin yang. Um, I mean, all the great philosophers and psychotherapists have that appreciation of light and dark. So, Nietzsche, the abyss, Carl Jung, the shadow, Machiavelli, the monster inside you. Um, it's having the awareness of those dark parts of the psyche in order to be able to sort of understand them, to accept them, to move away from them. So I think Jordan Peterson's message is very dangerous because I think it's more about understanding and accepting to then choose to move towards the light. So I feel quite sorry for him, to be fair, obviously, but I think he's a little bit lost.
We're all human beings, and it's so easy to listen to someone else speak that might have a big following and brought out a few books, goes on podcasts and glorified and followed and admired. And don't get me wrong, he probably is full of wisdom in certain ways, and many people are. But when a message or a concept makes you attracted to the darkness and ignore the light, then what happens to me personally, and probably to many others, is we know that ego is the enemy, and that your ego, if you let your ego become obsessed with the anger and the pain and the misery and the frustration, then that's where it's heading with blinkers.
Yeah, I think the ego is incredibly dangerous, isn't it? Because it's not actually looking out for you.
It doesn't care about you. Your ego has got no care for you whatsoever.
Yeah. As you get older and you become wiser and you become a little bit battle worn, you have that appreciation of the fact that there's more to self than ego, and there's more to self than ego and self. I think it's for me,
Awareness.
yeah, awareness is the word, and I
Yeah.
think me for the last few months, it's been a particularly challenging time from a psychological perspective because of some crazy life event.
Okay.
But it's heightened the need for consideredness, awareness, and the belief that I'm going to be better off by walking towards the light as opposed to the darkness.
We're aligned wholeheartedly. Yeah, but it's been very challenging, and it is very challenging to not, when your eyes lock with the darkness, it's in those moments where you have to decide every time to choose the light, because the darkness will reappear again, and then it's like a hypnosis if you let it, and the awareness isn't there that whatever is going on, it's another illusion, almost another opportunity to let your ego or to let yourself get lured towards the darkness. So how have you navigated that and been able to stay focused and disciplined in your pursuit of the light?
Concentrating on the fundamentals, trying to control my controllables and let the things that I can't control disappear. And again, from a physiological perspective, that boils down to obviously sleep, reduce stress, nutrition, exercise, and mindset. It's If you concentrate on the fundamentals and the controllables, then whatever happens, it's just about appreciation.
Would you say that it's taken everything you've learned as a human being through your practices to navigate this in a way where if it hadn't been for everything you'd learned, everything you'd done, it might have worked out in a
Yeah,
different way?
I think I've had the privilege of having 5,000 people sit in front of me and tell me their own very personal, subjective stories. And I've been able to apply a level of objectivity to hopefully advise them effectively on what they should do, and then also apply that into my own life. Um, and I think, yeah, it's been very interesting.
Yeah, and I can relate to that through the work that I'm involved with, where you see people that have had that life-changing moment, whether that's a situation out of their control where they might have lost someone, or they might have lost a job, or a marriage might have broken down, or they might have done something bad. And you can see the difference in someone that then uses that as an excuse or a reason to head towards the darkness or to lash out and commit crime. And you see with your own eyes the impact of that, and you can see within that person that they're deep down a good person and they are good people, but the circumstances have led them to a life that is miserable and very, very sad and full of suffering. And it's, for me, having seen that with my own eyes means that those decisions that I know present themselves, one will lead you down that path and the other will lead you to where you're destined to get to, because no matter what happens to you in life, it's all happening for us and we can learn lessons from it and then move on and then try and help some other people through the stuff you've learned. That's my take.
Yeah, it's funny, having read a lot of works, I always come back to Bill Hicks, and it's like the most apt line I've ever read from it is, "Today, a young man on acid realized that all matter is merely energy condensed to a slow vibration. We're all one consciousness experiencing itself subjectively. There is no such thing as death. Life is only a dream and we are the imagination of ourselves."
Nice.
Here's Tom with the weather.
That is a hell of a line. The thing I love the most out of that is that we are all one consciousness. It's something that I feel so strongly about, and that the more I embrace that we are all in this together, not just humans, but nature, everything around us. And when I'm out now in nature, I share that feeling, and it draws me closer to everything I'm doing, and it makes me feel connected to it's the power of the collective.
Surrounding yourself with the right people, because people are the problem.
Yeah, because when you open your heart and you say, right, I'm connected to everyone here, but then you're not in the right environment and the people that you're connected to don't give you that feeling, or you don't get the abundance back, then it means that you're kind of disproving your point to yourself, and you feel, actually, I'd rather not open my heart and try and feel connected to everyone because I don't like what I'm getting back in return. So it's actually detrimental then to that. It actually hurts. Yeah, it's important to stay in the right environments and surround yourself with the right people. I couldn't agree more. But I feel like we're also able to have a significant impact on those around us, whether it's over time or even just subconsciously. I think people do look at alternative thinkers and people that are trying to portray a message that is a little bit alien, disagree or agree. What I've seen personally, because I'm quite new to the way that I've been thinking, and the way that I speak online now is very, very different to how I used to speak and think. So the people that I'm in contact with, you see little subtle changes in their habits and behaviors and their language, and it's really rewarding to see, because you've planted a little seed that might develop over time.
I have a shamanic role, really. This guy came to me yesterday. He's had an awful 6 months time, and he sat down and he just offloaded, and he goes, "God, I so didn't want to do that." I was like, "Mate, it's all good. I think, it's cathartic to vent, and I think we bottle things up so much in our mind, and they become 10 times worse because we don't vocalize them. And I think men are very bad at communicating. So one of the sort of the privileges that I've got is the fact that guys just open up and just go, "Doc, I need to say this," and I can be very sort of calm and considered about how I respond, but there's a level of authenticity to how I respond because I've got.
Yeah, and has that ever kind of surprised people where they're like, "Oh, I didn't think you were going to tell me what I needed to hear. I thought you might have just taken the easy option and told me what my ego wanted to hear"?
Yeah, never, because it's about realistic expectations, but it's about tough love, because
Yeah,
you can get your platitudes from everybody else, and there you don't have to do this or that. Yeah, you have to put the work in. Nobody's going to do it for you.
I love that. Yeah, and I like to think it's certainly what's drawn me to yourself is that I can see you're just straight up, authentic, and you tend to then give off a vibration that means other people on a similar vibration, you magnetize towards each other. And it's a shame that it has to be online, because I feel like the connection and the podcast conversations where we're in person. Again, this would be such a fantastic conversation to have in person, but we can do that again.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I see you that you spend a lot of time out in nature, and the video that you did with Stas in the field, that looks absolutely stunning. What a location!
Yeah, we've bought 10 acres of pastureland that we're going to convert into sort of woodland, and it's just an escape for us, but also for guys to have these sort of important chats. Getting back to like hunter gatherer, but the basics, away from civilization, good ribeye steak, perhaps a nice whiskey. Again, delivering a level of realism where your senses are just absolutely alive from the wind, the cold, or you are alive. And I think we're in a box right now, and this isn't real living. This isn't real life.
No,
We should be out there just exploring and experiencing stuff.
we've got the same vision there again, because like I was saying to you earlier, the location with my sauna, it's down at Shellstone Pool, which is an open air sea pool right on the coast. My sauna's there, my ice tubs are there. I'm setting up the breathwork sessions, but I'm in contact with other practitioners, and we're just about to pull together an event which we're going to call the Five Senses of the Soul, because
Nice.
it's everything. She does cacao ceremonies, so we're going to start with the cacao ceremony to open the heart. We're then going to go into the breathwork, the ocean swimming, the cold tubs, the sauna, yoga. So within that session, you are feeling all of the senses you can possibly experience, but you're submerged in nature. You're surrounded by like-minded people that are all there for the same reason as you. And to me, that's not work.
Well, it's real, isn't it?
That's beautiful. Yeah, there's something about those environments where people open up, and it's exciting to create those spaces.
100% agree.
Excellent. So we've talked about a lot of things. Diet. I just wanted to touch on diet because, again, I listened to a talk that you did, a podcast you did with somebody else, and there was a topic in there where you touched on diet, and I just wanted to ask you what your view is on where people go wrong so badly with their diet, in particular with carbohydrates, and the view that all carbohydrates are bad. And
Yeah, I mean, of course not. Listen, it boils down to the fact that we're all susceptible to a little bit of comfort eating and emotional eating. So if you understand that you are what you eat, and you literally just turn into to you, so you should put in your body what you need, not what you want, and then you'll want what you need because you'll see the positive outcome from eating what you need. But we're all susceptible to the occasional curry or the occasional pizza, and it's often that reminder that you shouldn't do it because we will have that level of kind of emotional need that we're not getting from somewhere else. If speaking in generalities, from a testosterone production perspective and a general health perspective, a low carb, high fat diet is probably optimal. From a micronutrient perspective, omega-3, vitamin D, zinc, they're probably the big ones. I think we are what we eat, and people are chunky because they're emotional eaters. And I think it's about taking personal responsibility and putting into your body real food, not processed food that is full of chemicals and poisoning us.
I also personally believe meal timing is crucial, especially someone. So most days I'll do some kind of weight training, and then in the evening I might do a run. So I try and time my eating habits and the content around replenishing between the sessions. I always train on an empty stomach in the morning, train fasted, but it's working out a system that works for you, which you can only do by looking back what you're doing, whether it's working, whether you're at the optimal weight, whether you've got enough fuel to get through the workouts and they're not so hard that you're so depleted that you're then in a grouchy mood all day. It's that balance for me.
Yeah, it's going back to the principles, not rules conversation, because what you should do is wake up, go hunt, on a fasted state, then catch the prey, take it back to the tribe, turn into a more parasympathetic state, sleep, repeat. So, cardio on a fasted state in principle is absolutely perfect. I practice intermittent fasting for years, but
Yeah.
I train now at 5:30 in the morning, and I can't go till 2 o'clock to eat my first meal because I will be grouchy because I need to replenish the nutrients that I'm missing from the exertion that I've just been through.
How important do you see the glycemic index in relation to replenishment as well, with choosing the sugar content of the carbohydrate around your workouts?
Yeah, again, principle wise, low carb, high fat. The reality is if you're going to deplete your glycogen stores from your muscles and your liver, then you need to replenish it. Whether you go for simple carbs, whether for complex carbs. Again, it's very personalized. I don't have a hard and fast rule.
No.
That's why I'm a bit chunky right now.
You're a beast. No,
it's all an illusion.
no, but you've clearly got that very good balance between being strong and fit, which I think when you go too far down one and not the other, that to me isn't balanced. The people I admire the most are the bodybuilders that can run a marathon sub 4 hours. It's like that to me, that's impressive.
I think it's living by sort of 80-20, 90-10 rule. If you can live by 90-10, you're absolutely beasting it. If you can live by 80-20, you're doing okay. Again, we're all human. We all succumb to temptation every once in a while. It's just not letting that temptation take over where it becomes, seeing 60-40, because you will suffer the consequences of that.
Excellent. Thank you. I want to do something to you that you did to Stas in that talk, where you said at the end, give us some wisdom, give us something for those people out there that are struggling, that are not just at that kind of all right. They're down there. They're absolutely in the dumps, whether that's through physiology or psychology or circumstances out of their control. We can't control how we got there. But I feel like you're a very good man to ask, where do we start? How can we start looking after ourselves better?
It's about taking personal responsibility and allowing your behaviors to impact your emotions. And it goes back to that Carl Jung quote. For the hero, fear is both a challenge and a task, and only boldness can deliver from fear. And if the risk is not taken, somehow the meaning of life is violated and the whole future condemned to a hopeless staleness. It's all down to you.
Wow. I'm glad I asked.
It's a cracking quote.
Risk. I think risk is something that can be trained, but the person that is scared of risk and has never seen the reward of taking risk, big or small, potentially could live their lives never taking a risk.
Yeah, it's a calculated, considered risk because again, we're all utterly invincible until we're all really in trouble. And I think that comes from experience. And I think it's a rite of passage. I don't think anybody leads this perfect life. So however much you feel in a state of despair, it's not the end.
No, and I feel like following through as well, completing whatever it is that you've set out to complete, when you take that risk, is the only way really to see if that concept works. Because I feel like what can happen sometimes is that people take the risk, they give it 70%, it doesn't work, but then turn around and start sprinting back towards where they were, which is now out of reach. Someone else has filled that, or it's no longer there. And that's a very dangerous place to be, because you've not achieved what you've set out to achieve, which you could have done if you'd have just carried on. You've turned around, you've tried to get your old life back, and that's now gone as well. So that's where you feel lost.
Yeah, it's about just keep fucking moving forwards, mate. That's the tag.
And don't miss the pivot. Because I also feel, and it'd be interesting to see what you think about this as well. So when you take that risk and you head off in this left field direction with your end goal in sight, that move was absolutely right. And it was the move that was always clearly the right move to take, because else you wouldn't have taken it. But then if the blinkers come on, you miss the next left turn or the next right turn that was the completely aligned turn. That was the next door that had presented itself that felt right, but you ignored it. You carried on just in that straight line. And I feel it's all about the pivots. It's something I'm learning, where head off in that direction because that's right, but don't think that's the only option now. There's these other little
left and right pivots.
Yeah, I mean, very, very, very simply, again, it's rules, not principles. It's living by principles, not rules. And you having the ability to adapt to the situation that you're in right now, to make your future considered. I like it, mate. Thank you so much for your time today. Absolutely packed full of wisdom, quotes, takeaways. Yeah, I really appreciate it, actually. And it's clear that the people you're working with are so lucky to have that wisdom and the benefits of it for their physiology. Clearly are huge. Anyone that doesn't already know of your work, I would strongly advise you to jump on Instagram, give Dr. Robert Stevens a follow, and get in touch if you're interested in his services. Thank you, Ollie.